In this video, I'm going to show you how to clean up and convert an image that we converted in Adobe Capture to make it an SVG for use in Cricut Design Space. So first, when we get into Inkscape, we're going to go to File, Open, and I already downloaded my image from my email, so I'm just going to open it up here. We'll just click OK. And it might take a second or two to load depending on the size of your image. It's going to do that. There we go. And I'm going to use the plus and minus keys on my keyboard to zoom in and out. So if you see that happening, I'm using those keys. So here we have our image, and we're going to go to Path, Trace Bitmap. You can choose grays, but I always choose colors. Uncheck Smooth and check Remove Background. The amount of scans is usually the number of colors you have in your image, but because we have a lot of shading, I'm going to do 6. You can probably get away with doing 4, but because of a lot of the little details, I like to do 6. We're going to click Update. It might take a second. It's going to show you our image, and we're going to click OK. So this might take a second or two because our image is larger, and then once the OK goes back, then we can click out of this little menu here. You'll also notice over here, since it's harder to tell with this image, that you can see some of the background right here still on the left, and now that's gone, so that means that it was successful. So we can get rid of this, and I'm going to move this image over here to the right. This is our SVG. So the original image over here on the left, you can keep it for reference. I usually delete it. I like to pull up the original photograph on my phone or my tablet or something on the side so that I can see them simultaneously. So we're just going to delete that. Now this image here, I'm going to move back to the right. I'm going to zoom out a little for our next step. Now because we did 6 scans, that means that there are going to be 6 images here. So we're going to go to Object, Ungroup, and then I'm going to click off the image once that goes through, and then I'm going to pull the scans apart. Now, as we pull them apart, I like to spread them out because I'm going to decide which one I feel is going to be the easiest to work with. Now, as you can see, some of these are lighter, so I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to make them black. That will give us a better definition of some of those smaller lines. Now, sometimes your first scan that you pull off is your most detailed, and sometimes it's your last or in the middle, so I always like to pull them apart so I can get a better visual. Now, I'm really looking at the details of the hand here because everything else seems to have a really good definition to it. So I'm going to get rid of some of these, and I think that I like this one on the left the best. So I'm going to highlight this little arrow in the corner, and while holding the Control key, I'm going to stretch it out, and that's going to make it bigger for me. I'm going to zoom in. Now this may not be the easiest way to do this, but this is my preferred way to do this. I feel that it makes it easiest in the end. I'm going to go over here and select this little node tool, and you're going to see all these little dots. This is everything your machine's going to cut out. So I feel the easiest way to get rid of all of the stuff that we don't need is to highlight it and then delete it with our keyboard key. Now I like to go around the image first and clean up all the little dots that we really don't need. I'm not going to do that with this whole image because we'll be here for a while. This ultimately will probably be a very time-consuming project. So now you'll see here I have some dots here, and I can't tell if I really want to keep those or not, if it's going to give nice definition to her nose. So I'm going to click back on my selector tool, and I'm going to take a look at the actual image and compare it to the photograph that I have open on my phone. And I'm going to decide if I feel like these 2 little dots here, or these little spaces here, are really something that I want to keep. If I do, then I'll keep them. If I want, I'll delete them. It's not a big deal. My computer's running a little bit slow today, so hopefully that will stop acting up. And then you'll notice over here too, we have all of these little dots in her hair. your machine is going to cut out every little one. Now, sometimes if I know I'm cleaning up an image and I'm going to cut it with HTV, it's really not going to be so bad. I'll leave a lot of those smaller dots because it's no big deal. But when I'm using adhesive vinyl, I really like to get rid of a lot of those little dots. Now, when I can zoom in here, and I can see that this isn't too bad and this isn't too bad, but I've got a lot of little dots. So I'm going to zoom way in, and I'm going to select my little node tool, and I'm going to get rid of them. Now, I find that it's really difficult to get all of these little dots unless you zoom in really close, because as you see when we zoom out, it's harder to see what's what. So you can go through and do all of your nodes and clean up all of your little dots on the side, and then you go back to your selector tool. Now, when I cleaned this image up in Adobe Capture, I didn't clean up the lamp that's over here on the left. I could have cleaned it up more on my phone, but I find it's kind of difficult to do because it's harder with your fingers to really get in for small details. And because you can see that the line on her glasses is really thin, I didn't want to mess up too much of that. So I'm going to show you how I usually do it to make it easiest. I do feel that my process might be a little bit longer than what most people need to do, but in the end, I have found that it gives me the best control and the best definition for my projects. So I'm going to go in and zoom in a tiny bit more, and I can see that probably right about here is where her glasses should be. So what I'm going to do is take a circle over here, and while holding the control key, I'm going to just draw one, and then I'm going to go to Object, and I'm going to, usually I use the keys on here, so sorry that I am not, you know what, we can right click on it and we can duplicate it, and I like to change the color so it's easier to see, and I'm going to select both of them, and I'm going to go to Path Difference. That's basically Slice in Design Space, and I'm going to go over here and I'm going to fit that on nicely. Now you can see how this part would cut into her glasses, which is what I don't want to do. So what I'm going to do is probably just take a little square over here and cut off that little part. Excuse me, that's from my last step. I have to change that back. Yours won't have all the black dots around it. And you're going to go to Path Difference again. And now that I have this kind of arc here, I'm going to select my whole image and I'm going to go to Path Difference. And that's going to slice just that out. So that gives me a little bit. Now I'm going to go over here too. I'm going to zoom out a little so I can see. Now this looks like her eyebrow and her hair. And I'm going to just make a little line. And I'm sorry, we only need the blue part. All of these black, that's from me not putting my settings back. So only this blue is what is going to slice. I'm going to double click this so I can rotate it a little bit, and then I'm going to go up here. It's a little hard to tell because I have to fix my settings, but I'm going to leave it right here, and I'm going to select my whole image, and then I'm going to do Path Difference. Now all this is doing is separating this lamp part from our whole image so that we can use our node editor to delete all of those, just easily delete that one part of the image, but still give us nice definition. And that's really important to me when I do my images. So it's up to you how clean you want it to get. So I'm going to zoom out a little, and you can see when I select my nodes that this chunk here, it's not going to end up being connected to anything. So I'm going to drag and drop, and make sure you don't accidentally get a node over here or anything, because it will delete that too. So we're going to do this, and now as you see, I grabbed a bunch of nodes up here, so it's going to kind of get all wonky. That's okay, because we're going to delete them, as long as it's not something that we want to keep. So we're going to, again, we're just going to drag around here, and we'll get rid of that. And like I said, this is a time-consuming process. This usually takes me a few hours of zooming in and out, looking at my image, and deleting what I do and don't want. And you can really zoom in if you want and kind of really see what you're doing. Sometimes, depending on the area, you will have to zoom in pretty tight. I'm going to show you too. If you get all of your nodes except for one, it's going to do this, and then you can just click on that and delete it. Now I didn't clean up this whole image because it's too long to do that for you guys, but you can see I have all these nodes left here. I can go back and clean up, and I can clean up a ton of these nodes in her hair. So ultimately, when I'm done cleaning up my whole image, what I'm going to do, and this is an important step, is you saw that black rectangle when we first started our project. You want to shrink your image back down to fit in that rectangle. That is so that when you open it in Design Space, it shows up on your canvas. Some people have had the issue where they upload an SVG and it's so far off their mat, even zooming all the way out, they can't see it, and that's a problem. So what we do is make sure that it's in that black box so that when we do pull it up in Design Space and when we upload it, it's right there on our screen where we want it. Hopefully my computer, there we go. Okay, so all we have to do again is just highlight one of our arrows in the corner, and while holding Control, shrink it back down. And we're going to make sure it's fully in this circle here, or square, sorry. Then we're going to go to File, Save As, and you can save it however you want and just do plain SVG. You can name it whatever you want. I won't do that right now because I still want to clean this image up. But that's really all there is to it. And then you can upload it into Design Space.